Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thursday Talks with Chug. Each week, we cover pressing topics that matter to you and your business. I'm Ariana Gonzalez from Chug Attorneys and CPAs tuning in from our San Diego office. Please join me in welcoming partner and attorney Navdeep Meamber and senior business immigration advisor Justin Kennedy from our Santa Clara office. Hi there, Navdeep and Justin, and welcome.
Hello. Yeah, excited to be
Thank you.
here.
Thank you for being here. For today's topic, we will be talking about L-1A functional managers and discussing how to get approvals and meet criteria as defined by USCIS. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started, this conversation is for informational purposes only. It does not create an attorney-client relationship. If you have questions, please comment them below or email us at info@chug.com. So Justin will be presenting some information on the questions we get asked the most about this process and covering the best tips for crafting a strong petition. So I will hand it over to you, Justin.
Thanks, Ariana. So I'd like to thank everyone watching today. We're excited to discuss how to get a visa under a certain category that we often see our clients shy away from, trying to get for their employees due to there being a higher level of scrutiny involved with getting it approved. We're here to tell you that an L-1A visa for a functional manager without direct subordinates can be gotten. In fact, we've been able to do so for multiple clients of ours with different backgrounds, companies across industries, companies that are established with hundreds of employees in the US, or just in the startup phase with only a few employees in the US. As long as you go into a functional manager case with a clear understanding of the criteria and how to meet that criteria, then it's a great option for any qualified intra-company transferee. So I'll let Navdeep talk a little bit about the background of L1 visa and specifically L1A visas. So Navdeep.
Thank you, Justin. So today we chose the topic of L-1A because this is one of the common visas we do besides H-1B. Just for people who are not familiar with L-1A visas, L-1 visas are for multinational employees who have a foreign entity and then they want to be transferred to the US entity. That's what L1 is for. L1 is for two types, just to be clear, is L1B, which is for specialized knowledge employees. And then there's L1A, which is like a managerial or functional level of employees. So there's one L1A, which is like more of a people manager who manage people here in the US. And then there's L1A, which is a functional manager. So basically just, it's the ability to supervise and control the work of the other professional employees. So the employees have to be professional employees. So then I'll let Justin go more into the functional, which is different than the people managers.
Right. So, thanks, Navdeep. I'll give some further context as, to situations where employers might feel like they're stuck. Traditionally, the more common route for an L-1A managerial visa, like Navdeep was just explaining, is showing that an employee will be transferring to the US to oversee something and that they'll have direct reports who will carry out the lower level responsibilities involved with whatever they're overseeing. This kind of reporting structure is something that we're all familiar with. A manager at a company has a team of people who support them. They delegate tasks to them, review their work, communicate responsibilities and work practices. They assign work to their subordinates on a regular daily basis based on the employee's individual strengths, review team member performances, give like official performance reviews, influence team member growth and progression. But as we all know, this isn't always the same kind of structure that all managers fall under. In this day and age, a lot of companies are doing things differently. For example, people are working remotely. Companies are organized in such a way where there are different multiple departments who support higher level managerial employees on an as needed basis. And, these kinds of variations tend to be more prominent in newer companies that are just starting up and trying to grow their operations. And let's face it, the costs of growing operations can be high. It's not always viable for companies to have a team of people hired on in the US to support new managers in a traditional sense right away. Now, these things seem like a deterrence. If I'm an employer who wants to transfer an important employee to the US, but I can't show any team of people who are going to directly report to them, how can I get them an L-1A visa? Well, so as long as the employee is still considered a manager by the company standards, then it can definitely be done, even without formal direct reports. So the particular instance that I described just now is similar to an actual matter that led to an adopted decision that formed the basis for further more detailed criteria that USCIS now adheres to when determining whether someone is a functional manager. Specifically Matter of G Inc., which went to the appellate board after the initial case was denied by USCIS. So in this case, the petitioner was a multinational technology-based product development corporation, and they sought to permanently employ the beneficiary as its director, financial planning, and analysis. In their petition, they specifically described their employee as a functional manager. USCIS denied the I-140 petition and found the petitioner did not establish that it would employ the beneficiary in a managerial capacity. Now, when they filed their appeal, the petitioner stated they've been employing the beneficiary in L-1A status in the US since 2013, and that USCIS wrongly misstated facts and abused their discretion when they denied the petition. So when this got to AAO, they determined the central issue that they needed to verify here was going back to the L-1A, definition and functional managers that you can see in the regulation at that time. Whether the petitioner established that the beneficiary would be employed in a qualifying managerial capacity, and whether the beneficiary would primarily manage an essential function within the company. So like I was just saying, so prior to this case, there wasn't much further guidance or information about how petitioners could meet criteria as a functional manager. So this is why Matter of G Inc. became an adopted decision that led to practitioners having further guidance on functional managers and USCIS having further guidance on how to adjudicate cases for functional managers. So these criteria are now what we go by, and I'll be explaining these in further detail within the context of Matter of G Inc. Specifically, these criteria are: 1, the function the employee manages is a clearly defined activity. 2, the function is essential or core to the organization. 3, the beneficiary will primarily manage as opposed to perform the function. 4, the beneficiary will act at a senior level within the organizational hierarchy or with respect to the function managed. And 5, the beneficiary will exercise discretion over the function's day-to-day operations. So when the AAO began their analysis of Matter of G Inc., they actually consulted the dictionary to define the term essential function. Viewed within the context of the relevant statutory passage, the phrase from the regulation manages an essential function within the organization or a department or subdivision of the organization. It was clear to AAO that an activity-focused definition was what they should be paying attention to, since the statutory passage draws a distinction between a function and an organizational unit, as in a department or subdivision. Whether the function is sufficiently related to an organization's core activity or activities is inherently one of a degree or something where context is needed. So therefore, all relevant facts should be considered in making this determination. Ultimately, what USCIS now does is evaluate what is an essential function in the context of a given petition. So it's up to the petitioner, when establishing that whatever the manager oversees is an essential function, to 1, describe with specificity the activity to be managed, and 2, establish that the function is core to the company. So in the context of matter of G Inc., AAO determined that the petitioner did specify how financial planning and analysis qualifies as a function that meets the business needs within its, company. The record substantiated that FP&A is a clearly defined activity that provides the petitioner with financial strategies to optimize business opportunities and growth. The role of the FP&A function in that sense was to generate accurate and complete data to properly assess global revenue. So in that sense, it's a clearly defined activity. In general, getting this first criteria down is fairly simple. You need to clearly define what the function is that the manager oversees, what is its role in the overall company and the company's operations, and what the overall purpose and goal of the function is. In that sense, you can establish it as a clearly defined activity within the company. The next criterion, and what AAO sought to determine at that point, was whether the function, in this case, financial planning and analysis, was essential to the petitioner's organization. So they found that the unit's revenue planning and forecasting process impacts every other business unit and geographic area within the worldwide organization. Additionally, the petitioner's executive team and board of directors depend on these FP&A reports and strategies to drive its financial health and make critical decisions regarding mergers and acquisitions. So given the type and scope of the petitioner's business, size, and international reach, AAO found that financial analysis and planning is core to the petitioner's business, and therefore it's an essential function of the business. In more general terms, to verify that the function a manager oversees is core, necessary, or fundamental to the organization, it's important to show that it impacts the organization on a wide scale, and that other parts of the organization depend on its output in order to move important company processes forward. Now here, just as AAO stated in matter of G Inc., context is important to discuss when establishing whether the function a functional manager oversees is an essential function. If you can confidently say that the function impacts the organization on a wide scale and that the organization or parts of it run based on the output of that function, then you've met the first two criteria for a functional manager. In the slide here, I've given multiple examples of what you can think of as essential functions of a company. So I'm just going to read them off. Finance, IT, accounting, HR, sales, marketing, research and development, compensation and benefits, operations, business strategy, customer client relations, governance, sourcing and procurement, and corporate development. So these are all examples of aspects of any type of organization that impact the rest of the organization. Once the petitioner demonstrates the essential function, it then needs to establish that the beneficiary's position meets all criteria for managerial capacity, meaning the beneficiary is going to primarily manage that essential function. And here they need to clearly describe their duties and indicate the proportion of time dedicated to each duty. While the beneficiary might perform some operation or administrative tasks, the beneficiary must primarily manage the essential function. In their analysis of G Inc., going back to that, AAO found the beneficiary primarily developed and directed revenue forecasts and analysis for the worldwide organization, led mergers and acquisitions, and oversaw strategic pricing analysis. They also found that the petitioner had established the beneficiary is going to continue to manage the compilation and processing of raw financial data by the finance team to prepare forecasts and create short and long-term financial strategies. As part of this, the record also showed the beneficiary would continue to direct the work of various teams across the petitioner's 5 business units and 6 geographic delivery areas to provide revenue. And it was adequately shown how this team would continue to relieve the beneficiary from performing day-to-day administrative and reporting tasks, even though they did not directly report to him. thus allowing him to primarily manage the FP&A function rather than perform it himself. So from a general perspective, what's important to show when establishing this criterion is that the job duties of the functional manager are managerial in nature. They might perform some admin tasks, but overall responsibilities consist of directing activities, defining processes and approaches to be followed, reviewing and assessing activities and processes, delegating tasks to personnel and teams who may not directly report to them on a daily basis, but just on an as-needed basis. And now, even if the beneficiary does not have any direct reports or subordinates, something that has worked in our cases is showing how there are other departments, teams, and personnel in the organization that are linked with the function the beneficiary manages and what performative responsibilities they have that ultimately support the beneficiary as a manager. It's important to define who or what these personnel, teams, or departments are, and then to provide an explanation of how the personnel, teams, or departments support the function the beneficiary manages. In the right-hand side of the slide here, I've input a sample where you'll see where a petitioner is giving details of a particular department, in this case marketing, that supports the functional manager and beneficiary. Information about the department is given, what its main role is, and how it supports the function managed by the beneficiary, as well as the impact of the beneficiary's functional management on the department. So in this particular sample, in case there were multiple departments that the beneficiary would regularly interact with and delegate tasks to on an as-needed basis. So giving these kinds of details, in this case, got the L-1A approval for a functional manager, even though the person did not have any subordinates that they directly supervised and evaluated the performance of. This further slide includes another part of the same sample. So this further strategy has also helped numerous functional manager cases we've worked on, where we give a breakdown of how the lower level responsibilities involved with the function the beneficiary manages are related to it, who performs them, and what they actually are. Furthermore, this breakdown explains the various methods the beneficiary will engage in when delegating and managing tasks involved with his main responsibility. So overall, in meeting criterion 3, these examples that one can employ are just a few ways you can show USCIS how the beneficiary manages the function overall and doesn't just perform it. The idea here is that despite the fact that there are no direct reports on the beneficiary's team that they oversee, there are still people within the organization who are responsible for performing the lower level responsibilities involved with the function in various instances and on an as-needed basis. If the beneficiary weren't an actual manager, this wouldn't be the case, obviously. So, okay. In addition to showing that the manager will primarily manage the function as opposed to perform it, the petitioner now also needs to establish that the beneficiary will occupy a senior position in the petitioner's organizational hierarchy or with respect to the function managed. So with this criterion, USCIS is going to consider all relevant factors, the nature and scale of the petitioner's business operations, the company's organizational structure and staffing levels, the ultimate value of budgets, products, or services that the beneficiary will manage, and any other factors that contribute to the understanding of and provide context to the beneficiary's actual duties and role within the business operations. Going back to matter of G Inc., that this case, AAO found the record showed that as the director of financial planning and analysis, the beneficiary would continue to act at a senior level within the organization and with respect to the function managed. They noted that in the worldwide organization, which is fairly large, the beneficiary reports directly to the CFRO and indirectly to the CEO, while also working closely with other senior executives and managers. The record also showed that the beneficiary's revenue forecasts are used directly by the CFO and CEO to make critical financial decisions that impact the organization as a whole. So thus, in this instance, it was demonstrated here how the beneficiary will continue to be acting at a senior level within the company. So here, we once again want to stress the importance of context and information. For this particular criterion, when we're establishing the beneficiary's level within the company, it's important to talk about who they report to and what that person's role is, the other managers and personnel who are at their same level, and what kind of impact the beneficiary's decisions have over other teams, departments, and components of the organization. Now, finally, the last criterion, the petitioner needs to establish that the beneficiary will have discretionary authority over the day-to-day operations of the function they will be managing. So here, as with the prior criterion, USCIS considers all factors related to this, including the nature and scope of the petitioner's business, the organizational structure and staffing levels, value of budgets, products, and services that the beneficiary manages, and any other factors such as operational and administrative work performed by staff within the organization that contribute to understanding the beneficiary's actual duties and role in the business. Going back to matter of G Inc., AAO found the beneficiary would continue to establish policies and processes that would be used by staff to provide the financial information necessary to drive the FP&A function, and that he would have the discretionary authority to identify, execute, and finalize mergers and acquisitions. So I keep saying it throughout the presentation. I have to say it again. What helps here is context. And asking and being able to answer these types of questions. What are the overall day-to-day operations of the function the beneficiary oversees? And here it might be helpful to kind of give a history of the beneficiary's overall management of that function, and even examples of how it might have evolved to include some kind of like an evolution of the day-to-day operations, maybe involvement with other teams or personnel within the company over time, establishment of new teams. And then what kind of decisions does the beneficiary make in relation to the function they oversee? How have these evolved? Any examples of the decisions that they've made, along with explanation of what kind of impacts they've had? How do their overall decisions impact what they oversee, and in turn, the organization as a whole? And finally, is there anyone else who has any kind of authority in making or maybe even just being involved in these decisions that are being made? Chances are, if it's only senior level executive management and their involvement is mainly second to whatever decisions the beneficiary makes, and you can clearly explain how their decisions impact the company's activities in some way, then for sure you've met this criterion. Now, what we've found helps, and as you have heard and can see, I've been doing so throughout the presentation so far in various instances, is giving examples to our clients so they can relate aspects of older cases to their own situations and frame compelling letters of support and explanation for their employees. So I want to explain one further example of a functional manager case for L-1A. This is a case that we worked on for one of our clients. They had actually initially tried to apply for the employee to come in on an L-1B visa based on their blanket L approval. Now, the thing is, it wasn't really established that that employee was working with any kind of specialized or advanced knowledge. They're working with compensation and benefits specifically. And that's something that's standard across companies, kind of hard to prove how it's specialized. So when they tried applying for L-1B at the consulate, it got denied. Our client then got us involved, and upon review, it became clear to us how this employee actually could qualify for L-1A, even though they had no direct reports abroad or would have any once they transferred to the US, which had prevented our client from trying for L-1A in the first place. They'd simply dismiss the possibility of it just because of the lack of direct subordinates. But when we looked at it, it's a matter of just filling in the pieces. So the organization's fairly large. Establishing a compensation and benefits policy that would in turn define all the different levels for the various IT engineering positions that would then be followed worldwide was in fact an important activity that was essential to the organization. This client is spread out over multiple countries, and this particular employee was coming to the US to work out of headquarters, where they'd be making overall decisions about the compensation and benefits, programs and policies that would need to be carried out by every local HR department in each of the countries where the company had operations. It was going to be the responsibility of this employee to make discretionary decisions for each international branch based on the data and information that all the lower level employees would provide to them. And while they did not directly supervise any employees, they would still delegate tasks to them on an as needed basis. And there were numerous instances where we could explain in a letter of support, where the lower level responsibilities carried out by the personnel involved with HR and C&B directly supported them so that they could function at a more managerial level within the organization. We defined what the lower level responsibilities involved with the C&B function were, gave the information on who performed those, and differentiated them from the beneficiary's overall responsibilities. And so this detail is ultimately what got them the approval for L-1A, which frankly was something that our client was not expecting us to be able to do. So both myself and Navdeep, we've since worked on many other functional manager cases, gotten their approvals as well. It's really just a matter of understanding the criteria, breaking down how the beneficiary and company meet the same, and figuring out how to most efficiently explain through relevant information and examples how the criteria are being met. So this concludes the presentation. I want to say again, thank you for watching and listening. And in case anyone has further questions about whether they or their employees may qualify for functional manager classification or just any immigration related questions in general, I provided my contact details as well as the contact details for Navdeep. You can also just reach out to the firm in general at info@shib.com. We're here to help all our clients with their various immigration needs and are more than happy to assist with yours. So please feel free to reach out for a consultation at any time.
Thank you so much, Justin. Thank you so much, Navdeep. Thank you everyone else for joining us today. To stay up to date, please subscribe and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Like Justin said, if you have any questions or suggestions, send us an email anytime at info@trug.com. Let us know what topic you want to see next. And make sure to join us back here next week for more pressing topics that truly matter to you and your business. Until next time, stay safe and take care, everyone. Thank you again for joining us.